As South Africa marks Mental Health Awareness Month, the AM report will be unpacking issues to highlight this important plight. Today, we're focusing on a 2021 study by Unicef, which revealed, listen to this, that 65% of young people who are battling mental health-related issues simply do not seek help. The study found that some didn't know where to get the help, while others were simply afraid to speak out. So let's speak more about this and perhaps gauge how far we've come since those findings. Bring in Unicef Spokesperson Toby Fricker, who joins us via our video link this morning. Toby, it's great to have you on the program. Thanks so much indeed for making time to chat to us. Really concerning, I guess, what we found, at least through this study. How many of those young people who don't seek help also believe that they can't actually get help?
Yeah, no, thanks so much. I mean, the study was concerning that, and it ran in 2021 using this U-Report system, which gives opportunity to young people and children to feedback, on their mental health and other issues. And it was concerning because we saw that a lot of children, young people identified that they had some form of a mental health issue, but they didn't always know what to do. They didn't know, for example, where to get that support, who to talk to, who to access. And what's absolutely sort of critical now is, particularly given it's Mental Health Awareness Month, is to make sure young people have access to the resources they need. But what is also really vital to mention, and that was highlighted in the Child Gauge report that came out in June this year, is the importance of sort of what was called a life cycle approach to mental health. So from early childhood development all the way through to when a child turns sort of 24 years, which is where the brain is still developing. So there's key points during that life cycle where we can really come in and support children and young people.
That's really important because, unlike adults, children in some instances or in many instances still need guidance. And I can see moments where a child who's battling a mental health illness is dismissed as just being, not responsive or just, being an introvert, whereas perhaps there's a need to probe a bit deeper about what's happening psychologically.
Yes, absolutely, and that's where the sort of knowledge and awareness comes in, both at the home, so from parents being able to understand and being able to identify when their child may be having mental health issues, and then they themselves can also, first of all, support, hopefully, but also seek support that they might need to better help their child. But it also then goes through, obviously, into the education system and how teachers who play a vital role in children's lives can then also identify issues and then refer, or if they can, talk to children, open up a conversation and help to break down stigma more broadly around mental health. I think it's important also to point out that COVID-19, had a massive impact, obviously, on mental health and much broader than that. But it also helped maybe to open up more conversation around mental health. And that was also identified in the Child Gauge report, how COVID actually opened up some of these conversations. And it's being spoken about much more, on media like today, but also across different platforms, which is one positive at least. Yeah,
one of those discussions also, I guess, try to ascertain when a mental health issue is serious. Not to say that there are some of those issues that aren't serious, but hopefully you get what I mean. For instance, there might be a very fine line between someone being sad and someone being depressed. How do we ascertain where we should be worried, given our shallow pool of knowledge in some instances around this issue?
Yes, no, I think it's important to realize as well, not everyone, all of us have days where we're feeling sad, where we're struggling a little bit, and that's a norm of life.
Right.
Let's be frank. So it's very important that children, when they feel it's a continuous sort of cycle of depression, it's a continuous cycle of anxiety, that they then can get support they need. And often that also comes from peers. Other young people, other children who can see that in their friends can also help to identify that issue and to refer that or to talk to others to try and help them. And we saw in the U-Report poll as well, many young people were very keen to support their peers on mental health issues. They didn't always know the best way to do that and themselves needed access to resources to help them to support. And obviously there's also channels like Childline 116 that can help children in those hours of need as well.
Yeah. Speaking about access to resources, we know that the more severe the illness, the more expensive it might be to treat it. How well are we doing on that score?
Yeah, I think prevention is absolutely key. We don't want children, young people, obviously, to go down that path where their mental health issues are so severe that they really need full-on medical treatment. So prevention is absolutely vital, and that's what we're trying to do through UNICEF has a campaign that's called On My Mind that has been running now for over a year to help break down that stigma, to get children, young people to talk about issues they may be facing in life, in society. And that's really, really vital. And I think, we have to be honest as well. There's a lot of issues in society today in South Africa, but also globally, that affect mental well-being, not just for children, but for adults as well. From the climate crisis to the war in Ukraine and the impact on living costs. So it's really being aware of how these issues are playing out on children and affecting them, and getting that early intervention as quickly as we can.
Yeah, most adults, interestingly enough, struggle to imagine what it's like to be a child, even though we've all once upon a time been children. And the reason why I'm pointing this out is because sometimes it's difficult to kind of locate where children are really struggling. And that's maybe because the lives they live today are very different to those that were lived around 15, maybe even 10 years ago. How much of, a frustration are things like the social media exposure and the kind of hyper-information-driven life that we're living? How much of that is contributing to some of the mental health challenges that young people are struggling with?
Yeah, it's very difficult to understand everything going on in a child's life today. You're absolutely right, and particularly when a lot of that is played out on a screen or on a device. And really that sort of online safety is also part of this whole life cycle approach, getting children to understand, how to work, how to use social media in a positive way, which it can, of course, have positives, but really identifying where those issues arise online. That's very difficult, for any parent to really see that and see when that occurs. And that's why it's so important that we engage with tech companies, that we engage with other organisations like Media Monitoring Africa, for example, who are talking about online issues. They're working with young web rangers who are working within the school environment and actually trying to raise awareness of where online issues can arise. But it's absolutely vital that whole sort of cycle is identified. And being online today can bring many benefits. It can support learning, it can support even social interaction, but it can also be dangerous, and we've seen that play out in South Africa, but also across the world.
Absolutely. Toby Fricker, thanks very much indeed for breaking it down for us. Really important discussion this. We appreciate your time. Toby is the spokesperson for UNICEF.